She was fired in anger. But a year later, what she did left the millionaire begging for forgiveness. Before we begin, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And when the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The rain was coming down hard against the glass walls of Vanden & Kober Logistics, the kind of rain that made the city look blurred and distant. Employees moved quickly through the lobby, heels clicking, voices murmuring, umbrellas dripping puddles onto the marble floor. On the top floor, behind a heavy glass door with black steel framing, sat the office of Adrian Vanden, the man whose name towered over half the city's warehouse roofs and delivery trucks. He was 35, sharp-featured, with a jaw that looked like it had forgotten how to relax. His suits were always flawless, his hair always neat, his eyes cold like the skyline in winter dawn. The world called him successful, intimidating, brilliant. His employees called him the ice executive. His silence could make a room freeze. His words could shatter someone's future. Today, he was even quieter than usual. And that was never a good sign. Adrian was staring at a tablet screen, jaw clenched, finger pressing repeatedly on one financial report. Shipment errors, delays, a breach of internal distribution protocols. The numbers were more than wrong. They were expensive, and someone was supposed to be responsible. He buzzed his assistant. "Send." "In the distribution team lead," he said. His assistant hesitated on the other end. A pause so brief most wouldn't notice, but Adrian did. "Which one, sir?" "The intern supervisor," Adrian replied. His tone implied no more questions. His door opened minutes later, but it was not the supervisor who entered. It was her, a young woman, maybe 23, slim, with soft chestnut hair pulled into a loose, slightly uneven ponytail that made her look younger, almost gentle. She wore a simple white blouse tucked into a modest skirt. No expensive accessories, no fake smiles. Her name was Emily Hart, the newest intern. The one everyone liked instantly. Except Adrian, who didn't like anyone instantly. He lifted his gaze slowly, cool and controlled. "I asked for your supervisor." Emily swallowed lightly but didn't back away. "He's—" She paused, choosing her words with care. "He's at the hospital. His son had an asthma attack. He left an hour ago." Adrian leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "And yet," he said, tapping the report with one finger, "there was a shipment rerouting authorization made under his credentials, with your login as secondary input. That decision cost the company $86,000 in damages." His voice did not rise. He never needed to raise his voice. Emily's fingers tightened around the folder she was holding. She looked tired, like someone who had slept too little and worried too much. "I know," she whispered. "And I'm here to take responsibility." Adrian's eyebrow lifted, but not with approval. "With all due respect," he said slowly, "you are an intern. You do not make distribution decisions. You log data. You follow instructions. So tell me exactly what happened." Emily took a small breath. Her voice trembled only once, and she forced it steady. There was a storm warning. A severe one. Shipments going east were going to be delayed for at least 2 days. The route the supervisor chose would have left critical medical supplies stuck halfway to their destination. She paused. There was a children's clinic waiting for them. A muscle flickered in Adrian's jaw. "Business does not operate on sentimental impulse, Miss Hart." "I know," she said quietly. "But I couldn't just—" "You could, and you should have." His voice sharpened like cut glass. "Your job was to enter data, not rewrite a logistics plan." Emily's eyes shined with something. Guilt, yes, but also conviction. She opened the folder. "There are call logs, sir. Emails." The doctor from the clinic reached out. They had no oxygen refills. Stop!" The word struck like a physical object. She went silent. Adrian stood up slowly. His presence was controlled, powerful, the kind of power that didn't need to shout to dominate. "Your intentions," he said calmly, are irrelevant, because your decision cost this company money, contracts, and reputation. And I do not run a charity for irresponsible idealists. Emily didn't try to defend herself. She didn't plead or beg or break. She simply nodded once. I understand. And that unexpected acceptance irritated him more than any excuse would have. He wanted to see guilt, denial, fear. Instead, he saw something else. Courage? No, it couldn't be. Courage had no place here. He turned away, picking up a file from his desk. You're fired. There was no hesitation. No thought, just verdict. The room felt colder instantly. Emily breathed in. Not sharply, not in shock. Just a slow, steady inhale. Then before I leave, she said softly, please know that the supervisor didn't authorize the change. I did. Alone. Without his knowledge. She swallowed. So when you speak to him, please don't blame him. He has enough to worry about. Adrian's hand froze mid-motion. She was taking the fall. Deliberately. For a man not even in the building. For a father, exhausted at a hospital. For a sick child she had never met. Not for herself. Not for ambition. Not for gain, just for kindness. But kindness had no place in his world. Your access will be revoked by noon, he said. Security will escort you out. Emily nodded again. She didn't cry. She didn't even look back. She simply walked out of his office with the same quiet grace she had walked in. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Adrian sat back down. He thought it would feel satisfying, efficient, clean. It didn't. For some reason, the rain outside sounded louder now, much louder, like something in the world was shifting, and he had just failed to notice it. The rain didn't stop for 2 more days after Emily was fired. It flooded the gutters and blurred the street, signs and made the glass. Towers looked like they were melting into the sky. The city buzzed like it always did, indifferent to who rose or who fell. But for Emily, the world had gone strangely quiet. She walked home with her small box of office belongings held close to her chest. A mug with a chipped rim, a cheap notebook filled with carefully written reminders, a little potted succulent she had named Oliver. The raincoat she wore wasn't thick enough for weather like this, but she didn't notice the cold. Her shoes left wet prints across the staircase of her apartment building. Old building. Thin walls. Flickering hallway light, the kind of place that smelled of old books and dust when it rained. Her apartment was small. 1 room, a kitchenette, and a tiny window where plants tried their best to survive. She set the box down on the table. Then she sat on the floor. Not the bed, not the chair, the floor. Her hands rested on her knees. Her breathing was steady, but her heartbeat was not. She didn't cry, not yet, because crying meant acknowledging what had happened, what it would cost: rent, food, medication for her younger sister, her mother's electricity, bills. She had taken a job she didn't even want, a corporate environment she didn't belong in because it paid enough to keep everyone afloat. Now there was nothing. Her phone vibrated once. Mom, how was work? Emily stared at the message for a long time. Her thumb hovered, and she typed back, Emily, good, just tired. I'll call later. She set the phone face down. And finally, quietly, without sound, her shoulders shook, and tears slipped down her cheeks. They fell silently onto the floor. Not loud. Sobbing, just grief, just exhaustion, just the quiet kind of heartbreak that comes from sacrificing yourself for the right reasons and still losing everything. Meanwhile, on the 42nd floor of Vanden & Co., Adrian sat in his office long after everyone had gone home. The city below flickered with neon signs and headlights. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Expression, unreadable as always, yet something was different. He was thinking. And Adrian Vanden hated thinking about emotions. He had built his entire life on logic, efficiency, discipline. He had learned that mistakes were punishable, loyalty was a commodity, and weakness invited betrayal. He had learned that compassion was currency, one that people spent until you were empty. He had learned these things from experience, not theory. So when Emily Hart had stood before him, no excuses, no pleas, no self-protection, something had felt out of place. Why take the blame? Why protect a man who didn't even know she was protecting him? Why give more than required? Who does that? He dismissed the thought and opened a new contract file on his laptop, but his focus split. His hands paused on the keyboard. Rain drummed harder against the windows. Knock came at his door. He didn't look up. "Come in." His head of HR stepped inside, a tall woman with sharp posture and a folder under her arm. "Mr. Vanden," she said, "I reviewed the incident you asked about." Adrian's jaw tensed. What incident? The rapid rerouting of shipment 47B from the East Corridor. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. The HR director continued, "It appears the primary authorization was entered by the supervisor before he left. Miss Hart only completed the routing sequence he initiated. The decision was a joint action, not solely hers." Silence. Cold, hard. Cutting silence, Adrian lowered his hands from the keyboard. "And the supervisor?" he asked quietly. He confirmed the same. "Said he tried contacting you after leaving, but you didn't answer." He did not ask her to take responsibility for him. In fact, he tried to contact HR to explain, but the call was filtered. Adrian finished. The HR director nodded. His mistake, his fault, his decision. But the cost had fallen on her. He didn't show anger. He didn't show shock, just a quiet shift in posture, a millimeter of movement, but enough to change the air in the room. "Where is she now?" he asked. "We don't know, sir. She left immediately. We don't have forwarding information." Adrian's voice was still steady, too steady. "Find her." The director hesitated. "To offer her position back?" Adrian didn't answer. Because he didn't know. He just knew that something was wrong, and he could not explain why it mattered. 3 days passed. Emily searched for work. She sent resumes. She called places. She walked in person, but internships ended the moment you were fired, especially from a company known for excellence and discipline. Rumors spread, corporate networks talk. She became the irresponsible intern, without anyone knowing the real story. Her savings thinned. Her mother needed medication. Her sister's tuition was due. One night, after another rejection call, Emily stood in her kitchen, hands gripping the counter, breathing shallowly. She was not delicate. She had endured worse, but this time, something felt dangerously close to breaking. She thought of the clinic, the children, the oxygen tanks, arriving on time. She would make the same choice again, even if it cost her everything. There was a knock at her. Door soft, polite, almost hesitant. Emily tensed. She wiped her face quickly and opened the door and froze. Standing in the hallway, rain in his hair, dressed in a dark coat that somehow made him look even taller, was Adrian Vanden, the man who had fired her, the man whose decision had changed her life. He looked different out of the office, not less powerful, but more human. Emily's fingers curled on the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice low. Adrian didn't speak immediately. For the first time, he looked like the one who didn't know what to say. "I came to correct a mistake," he said. Those words hung between them, heavy and unreal. Emily stared at him, and for the first time since she walked out of his office, since she lost everything, her expression changed. Not anger, not relief, just tired. Very, very tired. "What mistake?" she asked. Adrian's jaw tightened. "My mistake." The hallway light flickered overhead, casting faint shadows along the peeling wallpaper. Emily stood in the doorway, arms loosely crossed, guarding herself without even realizing it. Adrian stood outside, the rain dripping from his coat, pooling slowly at his feet. Silence hung between them, not empty, but full of consequences, full of things unspoken. Emily was the first to break it. "You came to correct a mistake," she repeated, her voice calm but thin around the edges. "What exactly does that mean?" Adrian's eyes, sharp, powerful, accustomed to cutting through excuses, softened just barely. It was the kind of softness that would go unnoticed by anyone who didn't know how to look for human cracks in stone. "I should not have fired you," he said. "I didn't have the full information at the time." Emily let out a slow exhale. "Not relief, more like resignation." "That's how big companies work," she replied. "Someone has to be the cost." Her voice wasn't bitter. It was worse than bitter. It was tired. Adrian wasn't used to that tone. He was used to anger, pushback, arguments. This quiet weariness unsettled him. He tried again. "You did not deserve the consequences of that decision," he said. "Your supervisor confirmed the authorization. The reroute was the correct call. The supplies arrived on time. The clinic—" "I know," she interrupted. "I know, Adrian. I knew when I did it. That doesn't change the fact that it damaged your bottom line. And you don't make decisions based on intentions." I knew that too. She was looking at him the way one looks at a storm they've already been soaked by. Not afraid, just done running. Adrian's throat tightened. Subtly, invisibly, but real. He cleared it. "I want you to come back to the company," he said. There it was. The offer, the correction, the solution. He expected, not gratitude, but at least relief. Instead, Emily's face shifted. A small, controlled reaction, but unmistakable. Pain. "Adrian," she said softly, "I can't." The words didn't shout. They didn't accuse. They simply existed. Honest? Steady, final. Adrian blinked once. "No?" he echoed, not offended, not angry, simply confused. "No," Emily repeated quietly. I can't go back there." Her eyes flickered down to her hand still resting on the doorframe, fingers faintly trembling now. "You fired me in front of the department," she said. No explanation, no hesitation. "You didn't wait to hear what happened. You didn't even ask." Her voice stayed soft. "That hurt more. You think the damage was money, but it wasn't." She took a shaky breath. "It was my reputation, my dignity, my confidence. Every job I applied to, they all knew. They all assumed I was careless, unprofessional, irresponsible." Her hand dropped from the doorframe. "You didn't just end my job, Adrian. You ended every opportunity after it." The words landed like quiet thunder. Adrian's jaw tightened. His hands, always steady, curled slightly inside his coat pockets. He had known he made a mistake. He had not realized the weight of it. He was good at numbers, predictions, at consequences. But emotional cost? Human fallout? That was a language he had spent his life avoiding. "When I fired you," he said slowly, "I believed I was protecting the company, and I was protecting a child I never met," she replied. Their eyes met. No anger, just truth, and truth was the one thing neither of them knew how to escape. A gust of cold hallway air slipped between them. Emily stepped back half an inch. Small enough to be polite, large enough to be a boundary. "You should go home," she said. "It's late." Adrian didn't move. Not out of pride, but because leaving felt wrong, incomplete. He looked at her apartment. The chipped paint, the tiny living space visible behind her, the single dim lamp. He looked at her. Tired eyes, trembling hands she was trying to hide. He spoke again, quieter than before. "Emily, how are you managing?" This time something inside her cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, just enough to make her blink a little too quickly. She forced a small breath through her nose. "We'll be fine," she whispered. "We always find a way." We, not I, and that told him everything. He stared at her for a long moment, then said something he had never said in his entire corporate life. "Let me help." Emily shook her head instantly. "No." He didn't retreat. "You need support." "No," she repeated, firmer, stronger. She looked him in the eyes. "I don't want charity, Adrian. Not from you. Not from anyone." "It's not charity," he said. "Then what is it?" she asked. "Guilt? Responsibility? A polished corporate correction? A way to feel like the world stays clean and efficient and fair, as long as you fix your errors before they stain too deeply?" The words were not cruel. They were simply exact. Adrian inhaled, slow, controlled. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't entirely right either. He searched for the correct response, something true, something real. But before he could form it, her phone buzzed loudly from inside the apartment, a ringtone she didn't ignore. She turned. Adrian's eyes followed. On the screen, he glimpsed the caller ID before she picked up. "Hospital, Mother's Wing." Emily's breath hitched, just slightly. She answered. "Hello? Yes, this is she. Is she? I'm coming? Yes. I'll be there soon." Her voice was thin now. Her hand shook openly. She grabbed her coat, didn't even look back at him. Adrian stepped forward. "What happened?" Emily's voice cracked for the first time. "My mother's been admitted again. No hesitation." He held out his car keys. "I'll drive you." Emily paused. Her throat moved once, as if swallowing something sharp. For the first time tonight, she didn't refuse him. She simply nodded, just once. They went down the stairs together, silent except for the echo of their footsteps. The rain was still falling, but now they were moving towards something, not away. The city tasted of rain and sirens that night. Adrian's car, a sleek black sedan that matched the quiet authority of his presence, cut through the wet streets with steady purpose. Inside, the heater hummed softly, fogging the edges of the windshield where rain collided with warmth. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't look at him. She didn't look out the window either. Her eyes were fixed downward, as though focusing on the pattern of her hands might hold her together. Adrian glanced at her once, and then again. The girl who had stood in his office with quiet dignity was now small, trembling around the edges, not weak. No, he had seen weakness. This was something else. This was fear. Fear you carry for someone you love so deeply that your own body forgets how to breathe. Slowed the car when they reached the hospital, the old public medical center, worn from years of being underfunded and overburdened. The paint was peeling, the lights flickered, the automatic doors stuttered when they opened. They stepped into the lobby. The air smelled of antiseptic, old coffee, and exhaustion. Emily walked fast. She knew the halls without needing to check the signs. Her mother had been here before. Adrian followed, silent but close. They passed a waiting room full of tired faces, hope and despair sitting interchangeable in their expressions. They passed nurses moving quickly, too quickly, trying to do the work of 3 people at once. They passed a vending machine humming under a flickering light. When they reached the room 214, Emily paused at the doorway and closed her eyes, just for a breath. Then she stepped inside. Her mother lay on a hospital bed, gray blanket tucked to her waist. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow, and her hair, once long and chestnut like Emily's, was thinning, pulled back loosely. A frail woman, but there was softness in her features, the kind that hinted she had loved deeply. Once, Emily's younger sister, Lily, sat beside the bed. She couldn't have been older than 16. Dark hair, too big sweatshirt, tear tracks dried on her cheeks. When she saw Emily, she stood up and wrapped her arms around her. Emily held her sister tightly, one hand on the back of her head, the other gripping her shoulder. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here now." Adrian stood in the doorway, watching. He didn't step into the room. He didn't belong there. Not yet. He watched Emily move to her mother's bedside, take her hand gently, press her forehead to it. "Hi, Mama," she whispered, voice breaking for the first time that night. Her mother's eyes opened slowly, tired, but warm. "Illy?" she breathed. Emily's lips trembled, but she forced a little smile. "Of course. I came as soon as they called. Lily was so brave." Her sister sniffed, still clinging to Emily's arm. Adrian's chest tightened. Something in him, something old and buried, shifted. His memories were careful. Shadows, locked rooms, closed doors, but he remembered. Hospitals. He remembered waiting. He remembered standing in a doorway just like this, helpless, while someone he loved slowly slipped through his fingers. He clenched his jaw. A doctor entered. Tired, mid-40s, exhausted eyes behind smudged glasses. He looked at Emily, not at Adrian. "Miss Hart, your mother's condition has worsened. The seizure affected her breathing again. We've stabilized her, but..." He hesitated. Doctors didn't hesitate unless the news hurt. "We're reaching the limit of what we can do here without the specialized treatment plan we recommended at her last admission." Emily nodded slowly, but her eyes were already glassing. The doctor continued gently, "The treatment center is still willing to take her, but the medication regimen and respiratory therapy are expensive. I'm afraid we still need confirmation of insurance authorization before..." "We don't have insurance," Emily whispered, her voice cracked, not like glass, like paper, thin, fragile already. "Worn." Her mother closed her eyes, like she was trying not to be a burden. Lily looked at the floor. The doctor exhaled. "I'll give you all a moment." He stepped out, leaving only 4 people in the room. Mother trying not to cause pain. A daughter trying not to break. A teenager trying to stay brave. And a man who had never needed to understand the cost of survival. Not until tonight. Emily leaned forward, pressing her forehead into her mother's hand again, whispering apologies her mother didn't need and would never ask for. Adrian could no longer stay in the doorway. He stepped inside, quiet, controlled, present. Emily didn't turn, but her shoulders recognized him. He spoke softly, more softly than anyone at the company would ever believe he was capable of. "Emily," she lifted her head. Her eyes were wet. Her face was tired. Her heart was breaking, and she was still trying to hold everything together for everyone but herself. Adrian didn't look at her mother's condition with pity. He didn't look at Lily with sympathy. He looked at Emily, at the weight she had been carrying long before he entered her life. And for the first time, something inside him cracked. Not open, but enough to let something through. "Let me help," he said again. Emily closed her eyes. "Adrian, I can't take money from you." "It's not charity," he said. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She stood, slowly, carefully, as though her bones were heavier now. She turned to him fully. "Then what is it, Adrian?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Why are you here? Why do you care? Why?" Her voice caught. "Why me?" The question was not desperate. It was human, and a lifetime of his carefully built walls, built from loss, betrayal, cold success, and colder expectation, shuddered. He didn't answer immediately. He couldn't lie. He never lied. Not to himself. Not to anyone. He looked at her. Really looked. And spoke the truth slowly, like a man piecing together a language he had forgotten long ago. "Because when I made a decision that hurt you," he said, "you didn't try to protect yourself. You protected someone else, even when it cost you everything." His voice was low, steady, unguarded. "I have spent my entire life surrounded by people who take, who negotiate, who use kindness as a currency. And then I met someone who gave without expecting anything back." Emily's eyes widened. "It wasn't praise. It wasn't admiration. It was recognition. Kind of recognition that meant he had seen something rare. Something he didn't know how to touch, but could not ignore. "You are not asking for help," he finished quietly. "But I am offering it anyway." Emily's breath shook, not in fear, but in the ache of being seen. She didn't say, "Yes." She didn't say no, she just looked at him, and something wordless passed between them. Not love. Not yet. But the beginning of understanding. Hours. Blurred. The doctors made arrangements, forms, were signed. Adrian made a call. One call. And suddenly the treatment plan was moving, not because he was wealthy, but because, when Adrian Vanden said a life mattered, people listened. Emily stayed by her mother's side, head resting lightly on the bed. Lily fell asleep in the chair. Adrian stayed in the hallway, sitting in a plastic hospital chair that had never once hosted someone wearing a $6,000 suit. He didn't care. He stayed. Around 3 in the morning, Emily stepped out of the room, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. She sat beside him. Not close, but not distant. They didn't speak. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was shared. After a long while, Emily whispered, "You didn't have to stay." Adrian looked at her. "Yes," he said softly, "I did." And something else cracked open. Not loud, but irreversible. Morning came quietly. Hospitals always had their own version of morning. Not golden sunlight and birdsong, but pale gray light through blinds. Footsteps of nurses changing shift. Soft murmurs behind curtains. Time didn't pass here. It collected. Emily woke with her head resting on her mother's bed. A blanket had been draped over her shoulders. Carefully, gently. She didn't remember doing it, which meant someone else had. She lifted her head slowly, her neck stiff, her eyes heavy. Her mother was sleeping now, breathing steadier than last night. Lily was curled up in a chair, shoes still on, clutching the sleeve of her sweatshirt, like a child might hold a stuffed toy. Emily stood quietly and stepped into the hallway. Adrian was there, sitting exactly where she had left him. He hadn't gone home, hadn't slept, hadn't changed clothes. He sat upright, elbows resting on his knees, eyes unfocused, but not distant. Just tired. Even tired, he looked composed. Except for one small thing. His hands. They were loosely clasped, but the knuckles were pale, like they had held something too tightly. All night long, Emily approached slowly. "You didn't go home," she said softly. Adrian lifted his eyes. "No." She let the silence settle. It didn't feel awkward. "You should have," she murmured. "It's cold here, and uncomfortable." His voice was quiet, rough around the edges. "I've been uncomfortable before." She sat beside him. Not close, but close enough that their shoulders shared the same stretch of air. For a moment, neither spoke, and then, as if they had both been dancing around this one question, Emily exhaled. "Adrian, why did you fire me so quickly?" Her voice wasn't accusing, it wasn't searching for apology. She genuinely wanted to understand. He didn't answer immediately. He watched the weak morning light flicker across the hospital floor. He considered his words, not to protect himself, but because this answer mattered. "When you grow up in the world I grew up in," he said at last, "mistakes are not forgiven, and they are never cheap." Emily listened. "My father ran the company before me," he continued. "I was raised on the idea that empathy is a liability, that hesitation is danger, that every decision must be quick and final." His jaw shifted slightly. Not with tension, but memory. If something goes wrong, someone is held responsible. Immediately. Publicly. And the company keeps moving. That was the rule. No exceptions. Emily lowered her eyes. "So I was efficient," Adrian said. "Automatic. I saw a problem and removed it. It didn't occur to me to ask why, or who it would cost. He didn't sigh. Adrian was not a man who sighed, but something in his shoulders loosened. For most of my life, he admitted, that worked. Emily looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't cold now, just unpracticed at warmth. And when did it stop working? She asked. His eyes met hers. When you walked out of my office, he said simply. The hallway was quiet, except for the low rolling of carts and the occasional distant call over the intercom. Emily didn't respond. She didn't need to. The truth had already settled between them. Later, a nurse came to check on her mother. Lily woke up. Emily helped the nurse reposition the oxygen tube. The world continued. Adrian stood near the window, watching, not interfering. He didn't look out of place anymore. He looked present. When Emily stepped into the hallway again, he followed, but not too close. How much? She asked. Adrian blinked once. For the treatment. Emily crossed her arms lightly. I need to know. I won't accept something I can't pay back. He studied her. Not skeptically, thoughtfully. You're not obligated to repay me, he said. She shook her head. I am. Because I don't want what you do to be something I owe. I want it to be something I return. Her voice was small, but firm. Adrian processed that slowly. That's unusual, he said. Emily huffed a breath. Not a laugh exactly, but something near it. Everything about my life is unusual. A faint, almost invisible smile touched the corner of his mouth. Fair enough. He walked with her to the end of the hallway. The window there overlooked the city. Gray clouds hanging low, sunlight trying to push through. It will cost around $53,000, he said quietly. Emily inhaled, sharply. Lily's school, rent, medication, food. Everything. She had been juggling with precision, now echoed like an avalanche. She didn't cry. But her fingers gripped the window ledge hard enough to turn her knuckles white. Adrian watched her silently, not intruding. After a long moment, Emily spoke. I'll take extra shifts. I'll find part-time work. I'll manage, even if it takes years. Even if I have to pay it back $5 at a time. I will. Because I won't let you carry the cost of my life. His voice was barely above a whisper. Emily, she turned to him. You don't have to prove your worth to me. Her lips parted, startled, because he had touched the one she never exposed. Before she could answer, a voice echoed from behind them. Emily! A doctor. They turned together. Her mother had regained full consciousness. Not just half awake, not just aware, but present. She's asking for you, the doctor said gently. Emily moved first. Almost ran. Adrian stayed for a moment, watching her disappear down the hallway. Something warm and sharp lodged beneath his ribs. Something unwelcome and unfamiliar. He exhaled, slowly, and then followed. Inside the room, her mother smiled, weakly, but it was a smile. Her eyes moved from Emily to Lily, and then to Adrian. She studied him, not impressed, not intimidated, just seeing. You must be the man who brought my daughter here, she said softly. Adrian inclined his head. I was nearby. She smiled again. A mother's smile, the kind that carried more understanding than most people ever learned to speak. Thank you. Adrian didn't respond right away, and when he did, it was not polished, not corporate. You're welcome, he said quietly. Her mother nodded and closed her eyes again, tired but peaceful now. Emily stepped back into the hallway, and Adrian followed her. This time, she was the one who initiated the silence, but the silence felt different. Not strained, not guarded, shared. After a long moment, Emily said, You were right, you know. Adrian glanced at her. About what? She looked at her hands. I don't know how to accept help. Her voice trembled. Maybe I don't know how to trust. Adrian's gaze softened, imperceptibly, except to her. I don't either, he said. And just like that, a bridge formed, small, fragile, real. Two people who did not know how to trust. Learning it, slowly, together. They left the hospital just after noon. The rain had finally stopped. The city was still gray, but the clouds were thinning. There was light, somewhere above them. They walked toward the parking lot. Not side by side. Not far apart. Just close enough. Adrian opened the passenger door for her. Not out of courtesy, but out of quiet instinct. Emily paused before getting in. She looked at him. Not with gratitude. Not with dependence. With something warmer. Something forming. Something that had weight. Thank you, she whispered. Adrian held her gaze. You're welcome, he said again. But this time, it meant something else. The rain had left the city washed clean but not bright. The clouds hung low, as if the sky were thinking. The pavement glistened, catching the muted reflections of passing cars and hurried strangers. Life was moving on, as it always did, but inside the car the world felt suspended. Emily rode quietly in the passenger seat, not tense, not guarded, simply tired. The kind of tired that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from holding too much for too long. Adrian drove like someone who was used to controlling machines worth millions, yet understood the fragility of the human sitting beside him. His hands on the steering wheel were deliberate, steady. It was the kind of silence that did not need to be interrupted. But eventually, Emily spoke. When I was little, she began softly, looking out the window, my mother used to call me her fixer. If something broke, a toy, a plan, a day, I would try to fix it. I think I got it in my head that if I just worked hard enough, I could make everything okay. For everyone. Adrian didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the road. And now, she continued, I still do that. I work and work and work. Because if I stop, even for a moment, something will fall apart. Something will be too much. Something will break. Her voice was steady, but there was something behind it. A tremor, hidden under layered strength. Adrian finally spoke. You don't have to fix me. Emily exhaled, not with relief, but with recognition. I know, she whispered. That's why I don't want to owe you, because then I would feel like I have to repay you with my life. With myself. He absorbed that. It made sense, painfully, logically, intimately. When they reached her building, he didn't stop the engine. He simply shifted into park and turned toward her. His voice was quiet, but firm. You can repay me. Emily looked up, startled. How? By letting me try again. Not at business. Not at power. Not at the kind of success he already had more of than most people could imagine. Something else. Something he had never learned to do. She searched his expression, but there was no pressure there, no expectation, no hidden price. Just truth. Let me be better. Her throat tightened. She nodded, slowly. Okay. That one word was small, but it opened something vast. Adrian exhaled, something like relief, though he would never name it that. Emily opened the door to step out, but paused. Will you come by tomorrow? She asked. Not needing him, just wanting him there. His answer was immediate. Yes, she gave the faintest smile. The kind that only happens when a wall inside finally cracks. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Emily. The door closed. He didn't drive away until she was inside. The next morning, Adrian arrived at the office for the first time in his career without a shield on. No armor in his posture, no calculated expression, no sharpened edges, but no one noticed immediately, because that is how the world works. People don't recognize change until it has already reshaped everything. In the boardroom, the executives waited, tense, prepared, expecting the razor. Adrian took his seat at the head of the long-polished table. But instead of opening with numbers, targets or strategy, he said, something no one had heard him say before. I handled the Situation with the logistics department. Incorrectly. Silence. Heads lifted, eyes widened. No one breathed. My decision resulted in the unnecessary termination of an employee, Adrian continued. I was wrong, and I won't run a company where efficiency is valued more than people. We will revise our dismissal process. Immediately. This was not softness. It was leadership of a kind most of them had never seen. One executive cleared his throat. Sir, he said carefully, if we show inconsistency in enforcement, we may appear weak to— Adrian cut him off, but not sharply. Then we will redefine what strength looks like. The room shifted. Not physically, but morally, and it did not shift back. Meanwhile, Emily spent the morning at her mother's bedside. Lily sat beside her, working quietly on her homework. The hospital room was calmer now, brighter. Her mother slept peacefully. Not fragile like before, but simply healing. Emily brushed a hand through her mother's hair and whispered, It's going to be okay now, and for the first time in a long time, she believed. At afternoon, Adrian returned. Not with flowers, not with gifts, not with some grand gesture. With 2 coffees and a bag of warm bread from the bakery around the corner. Ordinary, human, he knocked softly before entering. Emily opened the door, and when she saw him, something eased in her shoulders. Something subtle. Something real. You came, she said. As promised, he replied, and there it was again. That bridge between them. Not fragile anymore. Growing. They sat together. They talked. Not about the crisis. Not about survival. Not about debt or guilt. About books, about Lily's dream of learning guitar, about how her mother used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, about how Adrian used to design bridges when he was 12, because he thought architecture could hold the world. Together, they learned each other, not through dramatic confessions or intense revelations, but through the gentle weaving of ordinary details, the kind of knowing that love is built from, not fireworks, not storms, the slow, sure kind, the kind that stays. And then, just as the day began to soften into evening, everything changed. A nurse entered, her expression urgent. Emily, something's happening. The world snapped. Emily was on her feet before the words had fully formed. Adrian followed. No hesitation. As the monitors in the room flickered and alarms sounded, her mother's breathing had changed. Shallow, uneven, struggling. The doctors moved fast. Emily's froze. Adrian touched her shoulder. Not gripping, not guiding. Anchoring, present, steady. Emily's breath broke. Don't take her, she whispered. Voice fractured, barely a sound. To no one, to God, to fate, to the universe, to whatever chooses the moments when love is tested. The room filled with noise that didn't sound like noise. It sounded like terror. Not screaming, not chaos, just the sharp, insistent alarms of medical machines, sounds meant to save lives, but capable of shattering hearts. Emily stood at the foot of the bed, frozen. Her mother's chest rose only halfway with each breath, like her lungs had forgotten how to expand. The color drained from her already pale skin. Her fingers twitched once, then stilled. Doctors surrounded the bed. A nurse gently ushered Emily and Lily aside, but Emily didn't move. Her body wouldn't listen. Her eyes blurred, not from tears, but from the shock of watching the world tilt. Emily, Adrian said softly behind her. She didn't turn. Couldn't. She's slipping, a doctor said. Voice calm but fast. Let's get respiratory support increased. Prep the ventilation equipment. Another doctor murmured numbers Emily couldn't make herself understand. Lily reached for Emily's hand, small fingers shaking. Emily wrapped her hand around her sister's automatically, the way breathing is automatic, until it isn't. The machines beeped faster. Emily's breath finally came out, ragged, broken. "She can't go," she whispered. "Not now. Not yet." Adrian stepped beside her. He didn't speak, didn't tell her it would be all right, didn't pretend he could fix this. He simply positioned himself near her, physically steady, emotionally still, like if she collapsed, the ground would not let her fall. Minutes stretched. Doctors worked. Commands sharp. Movements precise. The line between life and loss thinner than a whisper. Emily couldn't take her eyes away. Her heart was slamming so hard against her ribs that it hurt to breathe. Finally, one of the doctors exhaled sharply. "Stabilizing," he said. The alarm slowed. The beeping found rhythm again. The room softened. Emily's knees almost gave out. Her mother was not out of danger, but she had not left. Not yet. When the room cleared and the machines fell into a calmer hum, Emily stepped closer. She touched her mother's hand. Cool, fragile, familiar. Her voice cracked. "Stay! Please, just stay!" Her mother didn't respond, still unconscious, but her fingers twitched, gently under Emily's palm, enough to mean she was still here. Emily closed her eyes and let her tears fall silently. After the hallway was dim, evening had slipped in while they weren't looking. Emily sat on one of the waiting benches, Lily curled against her side, asleep now, exhaustion claiming her tiny body. Adrian sat beside them, not touching, not crowding, just there. Emily wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater, her voice hoarse. "When I was little, I used to be afraid that my mother would disappear. I think part of me has been living with that fear every day since." Adrian listened. "I thought if I worked hard enough, if I was good enough, strong enough, responsible enough, then maybe life wouldn't take her from me, or take anything else." A long pause. "But life doesn't bargain, does it?" Adrian stared ahead at the opposite wall, where the paint was chipped from years of chairs scraping against it. "No," he said quietly. "It doesn't." Emily's fingers tightened around Lily's shoulder. "I used to think strength meant holding everything together alone," she said. "But right now, I don't think I can. Not this time." Her voice broke open. "I'm so tired." Adrian, he didn't move, didn't rush, didn't offer words to fill silence. He simply turned his hand, palm up, between them, not grabbing hers, just waiting. Emily stared at his hand. Small decision, massive. "Wait." She placed her hand in his. Their fingers didn't interlace, just rested, warm, human, real. It was the first touch between them that wasn't accidental or forced by circumstance. It was chosen. Her breathing steadied. For the first time since the alarms went off, her body found stillness. Later that night, Adrian drove them home. Lily slept in the back seat. Emily watched the dark city lights blur past the window like smudged constellations. The world outside moved fast. Inside the car, time flowed like thick honey. "Thank you," she whispered. Not to repay debt, not out of obligation, but because the words were true. Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel for a brief second. "You don't have to thank me." But she did. "I know," she said softly, "but I want to." And that made something inside him, something buried under years of pressure, discipline and solitude. Shift, not break. Just shift. A door, slightly open. A bridge, growing stronger. A future, beginning quietly. Meanwhile, in the dark corner of another part of the city, a phone rang in a sleek, glass office. A man answered. Yes, he listened. Silence, a pause. His lips curved into a slow, calculated smile. "So the CEO is preoccupied," he murmured. "Hospitals tend to do that." A flick of a lighter. A cigarette glowed in the dark. Then it's time. The next morning rose in soft shades of bruised lavender. The sky looked like it hadn't slept either. It hung low and heavy, as if holding the weight of something unspoken. Emily stood at her small kitchen table, a mug of coffee warming her hands. The apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles only after a night of fear has passed, but not disappeared. The clock ticked softly. Lily was still asleep. Her mother was stable, but not safe. Emily took a slow sip. The coffee was lukewarm. She hadn't noticed it cooling. Her mind kept replaying the moment her mother's breath faltered, that thin line between staying and slipping away. The memory felt etched into her ribs. She closed her eyes. Breathe. A soft knock at the door pulled her back. Opened it to find Adrian standing there with a paper bag and 2 coffees. No dramatic gesture. No intrusion, just presence. "Morning?" he said quietly. Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Morning." He stepped inside. The apartment was small, too small for someone like him, yet he didn't look out of place. He set the bag on the table. "I didn't know what you eat for breakfast," he said, "so I brought 3 options." Emily raised an eyebrow, tired but amused. "You bought 3 breakfasts?" He nodded once, like this was the most logical thing. "Croissants, bagels, and oatmeal. One of them is bound to be right." Despite everything, a soft laugh escaped her, not loud, not carefree, but real. "You could have just asked." His eyes warmed, only slightly, but enough to be seen. "I didn't want to wake you." That sentence hit her unexpectedly, because no one had thought about protecting her rest in a long, long time. She looked down at the table, blinking away a sudden sting behind her eyes. Adrian didn't comment on it. He only poured her coffee. They ate in quiet, not uncomfortable, just 2 people existing near each other. It felt steadying. When Lily finally padded sleepily from her room, hair messy and dragging her blanket like a cape, Emily introduced them. "Lily, this is Adrian." Lily blinked at him for a long moment. Then, "You're taller in person." Adrian paused. Then something that might have been a suppressed laugh flickered through him. "So I've been told." Lily nodded thoughtfully, as if this was important data. "Do you like grilled cheese?" Adrian considered this question with surprising seriousness. "I haven't had one in years," he admitted. "But I remember liking it." Lily squinted at him. "You can't just remember liking grilled cheese. You have to eat one to know." Emily's eyebrows lifted. Adrian smiled, a real one. Small, unsure, but warm. "Then I suppose you'll have to teach me." Lily grinned. And just like that, he had won the war no one else had ever won with Lily. He had taken no effort to impress her, which is why he did. Later, after breakfast, Lily sat on the floor drawing Emily. "Wash dishes," Adrian dried them beside her. Their shoulders brushed. Once, neither moved away. The gesture wasn't romantic, it wasn't deliberate, just natural. Emily's voice was soft. "You know, you don't have to keep coming." Adrian folded the towel neatly. "I know, but you still are." He looked at her, not intensely, not commandingly, just openly. "Yes." "Why?" she asked quietly. He thought about lying, or giving a clean, polished answer. Something smooth, something that didn't expose anything, but he didn't. "Because I want to be here." The simplicity of the truth shook her more than any dramatic confession ever could. Emily looked down at her hands, trembling, just slightly from exhaustion and the emotional weight she was carrying. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to let someone be here." Adrian dried the last dish. "Set it down." "You don't have to know," he said. "We can learn together." Emily swallowed, hard. There it was again. The bridge. Growing, not rushed. Not forced, chosen. Meanwhile, across the city, the man in the glass office, the one who had spoken on the phone the night before, stood overlooking the skyline. He was tall, clean-cut and composed with the chilling calm of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to destroy someone's life. His name was Marcus Hale, one of Adrian's longest-standing competitors in the industry, not loud, not publicly aggressive, but patient, strategic, dangerous. Adrian's vulnerability was the opportunity Marcus had waited years for. He lit another cigarette and watched the smoke curl against the windows. "You can build an empire," he murmured to the empty room. "But the moment you start caring, you start weakening the armor." He smiled. "And that's when I win." Back at the hospital, Emily walked down the hallway toward her mother's room with Adrian beside her. Her mother was awake today. Her eyes were tired, but clear. Her voice quiet, but present. She saw Adrian, then looked at Emily. Not surprised, just thoughtful. "You've been here," she said softly to him. "Yes," Adrian replied. Her mother studied him with an understanding that came from having lived enough life to read people. "Well, you're important to her." Emily froze. Adrian did not. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply let the truth sit in the room. Her mother nodded once. "Be careful with her. Heart," she said. "No threat, no warning, no theatrics. Just the weight of a mother's love." "I know," Adrian answered. Emily's breath caught, not because of fear, but because of the sincerity in his voice. Her mother's gaze softened. "Then we are understood." Later that day, while Emily napped in the chair beside the bed, Adrian sat quietly, watching the steady rise and fall of her mother's breathing. He felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest, a sensation too gentle to be power, too steady to be anxiety. Something like belonging. He didn't realize he had fallen asleep too, sitting upright, hands folded, until Emily woke and found him there. For the first time, she didn't feel alone in her exhaustion. For the first time, she didn't have to hold the world on her shoulders by herself. And for the first time in Adrian's life, he wanted to stay. The hospital became a second home. The fluorescent lighting, the faint antiseptic scent, the steady beeping of monitors. These sounds and smells stitched themselves into the fabric of Emily's days and nights. She knew the shift patterns of the nurses now. She recognized the custodian with the tired eyes but kind smile. She knew where the vending machine coffee tasted least terrible. Life didn't stop here. It just narrowed. Time no longer moved in days. It moved in breaths. Every morning began with checking her mother's monitors. Every night ended with watching her chest rise and fall, like the slow tide. Emily didn't break. She didn't collapse. But she frayed, quietly, steadily. Her strength was still there, but it flickered now, instead of burning. And Adrian saw every flicker. The slow change in him. He still went to the office, but something in how he moved through the corporate world had shifted. He didn't walk like he was armored anymore. He listened. He noticed. When a department head spoke, with tension in his shoulders, Adrian paused to ask why. When someone looked exhausted, he didn't ignore it. He discovered something he had never learned in leadership seminars or boardrooms. People worked better when they felt seen. Investors began to comment on it. His meetings ran differently, now less cold, more precise. Because clarity didn't require cruelty. But his competitors didn't notice that. They noticed only one thing. He wasn't invulnerable anymore. Emily's days, her world was smaller now. Hospital, home, hospital, sleep, repeat. She continued working part-time remotely, typing invoices and managing accounts from waiting room chairs. Her laptop always sat beside a cup of vending machine coffee she rarely finished. Her eyes were tired, not red from crying, not bruised from lack of sleep. Just tired in a way that lived deeper than her body. Sometimes, when her mother was stable enough to rest peacefully, Emily walked outside to breathe. Just breathe. Cold air. Fresh, real. Sometimes she cried in those 5-minute breaks. Sometimes she didn't. But every time she returned, She placed her hand on her mother's and whispered, "I'm here." Adrian's place in their lives. He didn't become a savior. He didn't try to. He became constant. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he brought lily coloring books. Sometimes he brought silence, which was the most valuable gift. Silence where Emily didn't have to be strong. One evening, Emily leaned back in her chair beside the hospital bed, too exhausted to speak. Her eyelids were heavy. Her breathing slowed. She didn't even realize she had fallen asleep. Her head gently tilted and landed on Adrian's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't shift, didn't tense. He simply sat there stable as stone while she slept. His body grew numb. His neck stiffened, his arm burned, but he didn't move because she needed rest more than he needed comfort. And for the first time in his life, he understood something. Care was not always grand. Sometimes care was quiet, still, unnoticed, but unwavering. Meanwhile, Marcus Hale. Marcus struck his first blow quietly. A rumor whispered, through investors, that Adrian's attention was slipping, that the company was exposed, that decisions were being delayed. Then came a feature article in a financial magazine. "Has the Iron CEO gone soft?" The headline landed like a knife. Photos of Adrian leaving the hospital, speculations about emotional distraction. Stock projections dipped. Subtle, but enough. Marcus smiled when he read it, not because Adrian was weakening, but because the world believed he was. In business, perception was a weapon sharper than any blade. The day it happened, Emily was alone beside her mother's bed when the head doctor entered. A woman in her late 50s, composed, gentle, voice steady from years of delivering hard truths kindly. "Emily," she said, "can we talk?" Emily nodded. Her stomach tightened. They stepped into the hallway. The hum of the hospital buzzed soft and distant. "Your mother's condition has stabilized," the doctor began. Emily froze. Stabilized. Not recovered, but stable. Relief hit her in a wave so sudden she had to grip the wall to stay upright. "She isn't out of danger," the doctor continued, "but the medication is working. The treatment is helping. She's responding." Emily's breath broke, but this time, from hope. Real hope. The doctor smiled softly. "You've done well. Emily, she's here partly because you didn't give up." Emily's eyes filled, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself feel the smallest touch of relief. That evening, Adrian arrived as the sunset washed the hospital windows in gold. He saw Emily standing in the hallway, shoulders relaxed, eyes tired but lighter, the faintest curve of a smile pulling at her mouth. When she saw him, she didn't hesitate. She didn't think. She just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, not because she was falling apart, but because she could breathe. Adrian didn't say anything. He just held her. Her cheek rested against his chest. His hand rested between her shoulder blades. Their breathing synced, slow, quiet, complete. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was something deeper. Two people who had finally found a place to lay down their armor. When she pulled back, there were tears in her lashes, but they were warm tears, not breaking ones. "She's improving," Emily whispered. Adrian nodded, and for the first time, his expression broke open into something unguarded and real. "I'm glad." Emily noticed something then. He didn't say, "Good." He didn't say, "I knew she would." He said, "I'm glad," which meant, "Your relief matters to me. Your pain matters to me. You matter." And that changed everything. But peace is never the end, not in stories like this. The same evening, as Adrian walked Emily and Lily to the car, his phone buzzed. A message from his financial advisor. He looked down, his expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. Emily saw it instantly. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Adrian's jaw tightened. He locked the phone. "We'll talk later." Not hiding, not lying, but protecting. Emily nodded. She didn't push, but the air around them changed. Not broken, just strained, like the moment before a storm finally reaches shore. The morning arrived not with the soft light Emily had grown accustomed to, but with the cold, sharp edges of urgency. Rain had returned, slicing through the city in thin, relentless sheets. The streets glistened with mirrors of neon signs, their reflections blurred by motion and water. Even the air smelled charged, heavy with tension, as if it knew today would not be easy. Emily woke to a quiet house, Lily still asleep under the soft glow of her nightlight, clutching her blanket. Her mother had returned home the day before, stable but fragile, resting in the bedroom that had been converted into a sanctuary with medical equipment carefully arranged. Emily tiptoed around the room, checking monitors, adjusting oxygen levels, and silently praying she could keep this fragile balance alive. Adrian was already at the office, and Emily knew today would be different. The quiet constancy that had become their lifeline was about to be tested. She had sensed it the moment she read the news alerts on her phone. Adrian's world. The first strike came just after 9 a.m., though Adrian didn't see it until late morning. An urgent email from the board chair. "We need a meeting immediately. Investors are concerned about public perception." The article in Financial Horizons is causing instability in stock prices. Marcus Hale's influence is growing. "We need answers." Adrian exhaled, slow, deliberate. He had anticipated attacks, competitors waiting for weakness, but the timing struck like a calculated punch. While he was emotionally tethered to Emily's family crisis, he left his office, taking the long hallway to the boardroom, every step echoing softly against marble. His assistants trailed, expecting the usual crisp directives. But Adrian moved differently today. Measured, aware, present. The weight of Emily's world pressed alongside the weight of his empire. The boardroom, the executives waited, tense, as if sensing the storm before it arrived. They had known Adrian Vanden for decades, a man of cold precision, unyielding authority, and exacting discipline. Today, they watched a different Adrian. One not absent-minded, not weakened, but different. He opened the meeting without the usual sharpness. "I am aware of the recent publication," Adrian said. "And yes, it has impacted stock performance and public perception. But the company will not operate on fear. We will not bend to perception alone. Our people matter, and our decisions will reflect that." One of the executives, tall, sharp-eyed, adjusted his glasses. "Sir, if the investors lose confidence—" Adrian held up a hand. His voice remained calm but firm. "Then we explain. Transparency, accountability, and results. Not panic." The room remained silent. The calm authority unsettled them almost more than the panic would have. Adrian wasn't breaking. He was shifting. Strategically, humanly, undeniably. Meanwhile, Emily's day. Emily had returned to the hospital briefly, ensuring her mother was comfortable. Lily followed her like a shadow, unusually quiet. Emily was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. Her phone vibrated relentlessly. Messages from her part-time job, reminders about medication schedules, insurance calls, and an automated alert from her mother's remote monitor. Yet amidst the chaos, Adrian's presence lingered in her thoughts. He had promised to help, to be constant, and she had let herself believe it. But now, as news of the market attack reached her phone, she realized just how exposed he had become. The first real blow by late afternoon, the attack materialized fully. Marcus Hale had orchestrated a series of leaks, releasing confidential internal memos to key financial news outlets. Questions of Adrian's leadership, emotional stability, and decision-making flooded social media. Speculation about Adrian being distracted by personal issues ignited a storm. Emily received a frantic call from Adrian's executive assistant, explaining that Adrian's phone was ringing non-stop, and the media were surrounding his office. Her chest tightened. She had been used to fear for her mother. Now she felt fear for him. She found Adrian at the office late that evening, leaning against the massive window overlooking the city. Rain streaked the glass, mirroring the streaks of exhaustion on his face. His suit was rumpled. His hands rested heavily on the glass. He didn't move when she entered. "Emily," he began, voice rough. "It's worse than I thought." She approached cautiously. "What happened?" "They're calling for my resignation. Investors want answers now. Marcus, he's moving faster than we anticipated. He's leveraging my attention here. Your mother, Lily, you, all of it. They want to destabilize me." Emily's heart raced. She stepped closer, gripping his arm. "You're not alone in this," she whispered. "We'll handle it. Together." Adrian looked at her. Really looked, seeing the strength she carried despite exhaustion, the fierceness buried beneath fragile edges. For a moment his world didn't feel like a storm at all. It felt like a hand in the dark, at home, a moment of fragility. That night, Adrian accompanied Emily home, ensuring Lily and her mother were safe. The apartment was quiet. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder grumbled softly. Emily's mother slept peacefully, monitors humming softly. Lily was curled in bed, finally asleep. The weight of the day pressed down on Emily. She sat on the couch, head in hands. Adrian knelt beside her. "I can't fail them," she whispered. "I can't." Adrian didn't offer clichés. He simply held her hand, letting her lean into him. No words, no grand gestures, just presence. "Then we fight," he said softly. "Together, step by step. You are not alone in this, Emily." And for the first time she allowed herself to lean entirely on someone. The storm within and without. The night stretched on. Emily and Adrian sat in silence, listening to rain, listening to the quiet hum of life continuing despite the chaos outside. But Marcus Hale's shadow was growing. His moves were precise, patient, and merciless. Emily realized that the life she and Adrian were trying to carve, the connection forming, the trust, the fragile hope, was under immediate threat. Not from fate, not from chance, but from human ambition, calculation, and cruelty. And Adrian, the man who had built empires and controlled outcomes, was faced with a problem that could not be solved with money or strategy alone. He had to fight as a human, vulnerable, exhausted, tethered to others, not as a CEO, but as a man who could lose everything that now mattered: Emily, her family, and the fragile trust they had built. The city was restless that morning, though most people did not notice. Rain had stopped, but the streets were slick with remnants, shimmering under the low, gray light. Cars rushed past, their tires splashing puddles onto the sidewalks. Pedestrians walked with umbrellas, heads down, as if the storm outside demanded inward focus. Adrian's office, high above the city, looked calm, but inside, the storm had already arrived. The boardroom Adrian entered, briefcase in hand, but his posture was different from usual. No sharp stride, no controlled, measured precision. There was weight to his steps, a combination of fatigue, urgency, and determination. The boardroom had already been filled. The executives whispered in low tones, exchanging worried glances. The stock market reports, the leaks, the media coverage, all had thrown the company into a precarious spiral. Adrian closed the door behind him. Silence fell. Marcus Hale had already made his move in the shadows. Investors were questioning Adrian's ability to lead. Public perception was turning. Every weakness he had, every personal tie, was being scrutinized. And now, the board wanted answers. Adrian took a deep breath and began. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said evenly, "I am aware of the situation. The rumors, the speculation, the manipulation from competitors. Yes, the company is under pressure. But we are not paralyzed by fear. We are a team, and we are accountable." One executive raised a hand, voice shaky. "Sir, if this perception continues, stockholders might force emergency measures. Your personal involvement." your time away from the office. Adrian held up his hand. We will address their concerns with transparency, not with panic, not with false appearances. He paused, scanning the room. I will not sacrifice the integrity of this company, nor the people within it, for anyone's perception of me. That includes myself. Murmurs swept the room. Some nodded. Others remained skeptical. Adrian knew it, but he didn't flinch. Emily's morning meanwhile, Emily prepared for her day at the hospital. Her mother was resting quietly, Lily practicing piano notes softly in the living room. But Emily's mind was elsewhere. She knew the storm was coming. Marcus Hale's reach wasn't confined to corporate news or stock prices. It would try to touch the life she had carved in the past weeks. The life with Adrian that had grown quiet, intimate, and real. Her fingers tightened around her bag strap as she walked down the hallway of their apartment building. Rain from last night had left the pavement wet, the air crisp. She imagined Adrian in his office now, surrounded by a corporate battlefield he could not escape, and then she made a decision. She would not be a bystander. The first confrontation, Adrian didn't see her arrive. She slipped past the receptionist, badge in hand, and moved silently to the top-floor conference room. He looked up as she appeared in the doorway. "Emily?" he whispered, surprised but not alarmed. "I couldn't stay at home," she said. Her voice was steady. "I needed to see it. To see you." Adrian gestured to the empty chair across from him. "It's dangerous here." "I know," she replied. "And I don't care. You're not alone in this. Not today. Not ever again." Her presence was quiet, yet commanding. Something in Adrian's chest tightened. Not from fear, but from recognition. She was no longer just someone he protected. She was someone he could rely on. Marcus Hale strikes. Then the call came. It was a secure line. No ID, only Marcus's voice. "Good morning, Adrian," Marcus said. Calm, measured. Ice. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Marcus, you're distracted," Marcus continued. "Your company is unstable. Your personal entanglements make you predictable. If you continue to let your private life interfere with your business, I can guarantee you the shareholders will remove you." Adrian's hands curled into fists on the table. He could feel Emily watching him. He could feel Lily and her mother in his mind. "You'll need more than threats, Marcus," Adrian said evenly. "Because I don't make decisions from fear." There was a pause. Marcus smiled. "We shall see. Enjoy your morning. The next week will be illuminating." The line went dead. Adrian exhaled slowly. His composure didn't falter, but the weight of the threat was undeniable. Emily placed her hand lightly on his arm. "You don't have to fight this alone." He looked at her. For the first time in days, he let himself breathe. Late afternoon, escalation. By late afternoon, the media frenzy intensified. Leaked emails, speculations on Adrian's leadership, and veiled hints at his distraction due to personal life were spreading across platforms. Marcus Hale's influence was everywhere, invisible but suffocating. The pressure on Adrian was immense. Every decision was scrutinized, every move questioned. And yet, every glance at Emily, at the strength she radiated, reminded him of why he couldn't collapse. Not now. Not ever. He called a meeting with the crisis management team. Charts, statistics, media monitoring. They strategized. They calculated. But Adrian realized the truth. This was no longer just corporate maneuvering. This was personal. Emily's resolve later. Emily returned home exhausted, but resolute. She checked her mother's monitors. Lily played quietly, but there was tension in the air. Emily realized that Adrian's battle wasn't confined to the skyscraper office. It would touch every life he cared about. She couldn't fix the company. She couldn't manage the stocks. But she could be present. She could anchor him. She could remind him of what truly mattered. That night, when Adrian arrived at her apartment, she was waiting. No words needed. They just stood in the kitchen, silent. Finally, Adrian said, "You shouldn't be here." Emily shook her head. "I told you, I'm not leaving. Not when you're under attack. Not now." He looked at her, and for a moment, the CEO, the strategist, the man who built empires, disappeared. All that was left was a man, tethered to someone he loved. First victory, first loss. By midnight, Adrian had stabilized immediate stock fluctuations, countered several of Marcus Hale's leaks with carefully calculated press statements, and reassured investors. But he knew the fight was far from over. He looked at Emily. "I can't protect everyone. Not everyone. And some things we can't anticipate." Emily stepped closer, placing a hand on his chest. "Then let's face it together, step by step." They stood in silence, the city lights reflecting in the rain-slicked streets below. It wasn't victory. Not yet, but it was solidarity. A bridge had been tested, and though storm clouds still lingered, it had held. The city seemed to hold its breath. The sky, a heavy slate gray, threatened rain, but didn't yet release it. The streets were slick and reflective, neon and tail lights shimmering in puddles, like fragments of glass scattered by an invisible hand. In the highest tower of the financial district, Adrian Vanden stared out of his office window. Below, life went on unaware. Pedestrians hustled, cars honked, people argued. But above it all, the storm, both literal and metaphorical, was coming to its apex. Adrian's hands were clasped behind his back. The boardroom meeting he had just left weighed on him like a lead blanket. Investors demanded answers. Analysts questioned his decisions. Media speculation had reached a fever pitch. Marcus Hale's strategic assault had been precise, merciless, and public. And yet, in that moment, Adrian felt a quiet clarity. He would not let fear dictate his actions. Morning. The calm. Before Emily woke early, the muted light of dawn slipping through her apartment blinds. Lily was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling steadily. Her mother stirred softly in the bedroom, eyes flickering open. Emily paused, placing a hand on her mother's arm. "Good morning," she whispered. "We'll get through today." Her mother smiled faintly. "You've been so strong." Emily shook her head. "No, you've been stronger. You just didn't know it yet." After breakfast, she dressed quickly, grabbing her coat and bag. Today wasn't just another day at the hospital. It was the day the next wave of Marcus Hale's attack would come, and Emily could not be passive. She had resolved, in the quiet moments of the past week, that she would not allow herself, or Adrian, to face this storm alone. Arrival at the office. Adrian was already there when Emily arrived. His presence was commanding, yet tempered with exhaustion, the kind that comes not from physical fatigue, but from the relentless pressure of responsibility. "Emily," he said, voice quiet but steady. "You shouldn't have come." "I said I would be here," she replied softly, standing her ground. "I'm not leaving, not today, not ever, if I can help it." He studied her. Every line of her face, every faint shadow under her eyes. She was tired, yes, but unwavering. He realized in that moment that her strength wasn't about physical endurance. It was moral, emotional, unshakable in ways that even he, a man who controlled empires, admired deeply. He nodded once. "Then stay close." The boardroom showdown. The boardroom was tense, electric with expectation. The executives were aware of the media leaks, stock fluctuations, and Marcus Hale's encroaching influence. The room waited, knowing Adrian was facing not only a business crisis but a personal one, with Emily's and Lily's well-being at stake. Adrian began with measured words, his calm demeanor commanding attention. "We are facing a challenge," he said, "a competitor attempting to manipulate perception and destabilize our company. But I assure you, this company is not built on fear. It is built on accountability, skill, and the people who make it strong. Marcus Hale's machinations had not gone unnoticed. Analysts, news outlets, and even some internal staffers questioned whether Adrian's recent personal entanglements, Emily and her family, had distracted him. But Adrian refused to yield to that narrative. He presented clear data, mitigation strategies, and steps to reinforce confidence, both internally and publicly. The room was silent when he finished, but the silence was different than before. There was respect now, reluctant, careful, but real. Adrian's calm authority had countered panic, and for a moment the boardroom held its collective breath, recognizing that the storm had not broken their leader. Outside forces move. Marcus Hale, in his penthouse office, watched the same city through rain-streaked windows. A grin curved his lips as he studied the stock charts, media sentiment, and social feeds. He had expected Adrian to falter, expected panic, expected mistakes. But Adrian's measured response, the subtle but unwavering support of Emily, and the cohesion of his team had countered most of Marcus's moves. He clenched his fist. "This isn't over," he murmured. Hale's next move would be direct. Not whispers, not leaks, but confrontation. And he had already prepared for it. Emily and Adrian. The heart of the storm later, Adrian returned to Emily's apartment. Rain had begun again, a steady patter against the windows. Lily and her mother were asleep, their breathing steady. For a brief moment, the world outside ceased to matter. Emily met Adrian in the living room. He looked worn, yet resolute. "I tried to hold it together today," he said quietly. "But Marcus Hale, he's relentless, and he's coming closer, in ways I can't control." Emily stepped forward, her hand finding his. "Then we face it together, not alone, step by step. Every obstacle, every attack, we'll endure it together." Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just loyalty but unwavering moral courage. Her presence, steady and human, anchored him in a way no strategy meeting or corporate maneuver ever could. I don't know if I've ever faced someone like you," he admitted softly. Emily smiled faintly. "Then don't. Face me, not anyone else, and know that I'll stay." It wasn't romantic yet. It wasn't a grand declaration. It was something deeper: trust, mutual understanding, and the choice to lean on one another in the face of the storm. Marcus Hale. The confrontation. By evening, Marcus Hale made his move. He appeared at the company headquarters, unannounced, in a rare display of brazen confidence. Security intercepted him initially, but his presence alone, in the same building, was enough to send ripples of tension through the staff. Adrian confronted him in the executive suite, the city lights casting long shadows across the polished floor. Marcus was calm, almost casual, as if the entire battle were a game. "You've survived my little games," Marcus said smoothly. "But survival isn't victory, Adrian. It's temporary." Adrian's jaw tightened. "You've underestimated me. You've underestimated this company. And you've underestimated the people who matter to me." Marcus smirked. "Including her?" His eyes flicked to Emily, who had followed Adrian quietly, standing behind him. Adrian didn't flinch. "Including her. And that is why you will not succeed today." The room's tension was almost tangible, a storm ready to break in a single word. Marcus lunged metaphorically, attacking Adrian's business, reputation, and moral standing. But Adrian, grounded by Emily's presence, responded with clarity, precision, and moral fortitude. The confrontation was not violent in a physical sense, but it was a battle of strategy, willpower, and unwavering principles. Marcus realized, for the first time, that emotional leverage alone could not topple Adrian. Resolution by nightfall, Marcus Hale withdrew, forced to retreat to his own schemes. He had miscalculated Adrian's resilience, the loyalty of his team, and the unyielding moral courage of Emily. Adrian and Emily sat together in the living room, rain still pattering against the windows. Lily slept nearby, her soft breathing a reminder of what truly mattered. Adrian turned to Emily. I could not have endured this. Not without you. You anchored me when everything else threatened to fall apart. Emily reached for his hand. And I could not have faced my own fears without you. We've learned something, haven't we? Adrian nodded. That strength isn't always measured by control or power or victories. Sometimes it's in standing together. Sometimes it's in letting someone in, even when it's hard. Emily smiled, eyes glistening. And that is worth more than any empire. They sat together, hands clasped, listening to the rain, the city alive but distant. The storm had passed. For now, moral and emotional closure. The night settled, quiet, steady, human. Emily and Adrian had faced fear, exposure, and moral tests. They had endured threats to their careers, reputations, and personal lives. And through it all, they discovered a deeper truth. Love, trust, and moral courage are not grand gestures. They are the quiet, unwavering choices we make every day. Adrian had learned to lean on someone, to allow himself vulnerability without fear. Emily had learned to trust that caring for someone else did not mean losing herself. Together, they had built a bridge strong enough to withstand storms, both literal and metaphorical. Outside, the city continued its ceaseless motion. Inside, they finally found stillness, connection, and hope. And in that moment, it was enough. He hung up. The first thread of the storm had been pulled.